Hello, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Aarna Sahu, host of Aarna's News, where on this podcast channel, I aim to eliminate the gender gap in the STEM fields by featuring inspiring female professionals and highlighting their stories and accomplishments to further encourage girls. On today's episode,
But it wasn't as cool back when I started it. CEO and founder sounds important, but when it was just me by myself, it was pretty scary to kind of give up the security of a job and to follow a passion, follow and do something that I just felt was right. But it really was the best path for me. But at the same time, I just, I think that's just something that people should be reminded of when they first go into these things. Is quite scary. But here I can sit 10 years later and it was worth it. But I didn't always think that. I think I was a little afraid at the beginning.
today on episode 101, I'm pleased to announce our guest, Dr. Keli Christopher. She is a trailblazing leader and educator dedicating to advancing STEM education for students of color. As the founder and CEO of STEM Greenhouse, she champions the belief that nurturing curiosity in STEM leads to flourishing children. The third Black woman globally to earn a Ph.D. in agricultural engineering, her experiences fueled her drive to close the opportunity gap and diversify career paths for under-resourced youth. Her greatest accomplishments have been successfully advocating for change in philanthropic, educational, and government systems. These changes have resulted in more equitable funding for nonprofit organizations in our community. Some of Dr. Christopher's honors include the Woman of the Year Brilliance Award and the Dr. Melinda Sapp Legacy Award or the Grand Rapids Symphony in 2021. Her work is a testament to the power of one person's influence, transforming generations through education. Well, thank you so much, Keli, for being here today. Before we dive into the questions, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, sure. I'm Dr. Keli Christopher, and I am from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and that's where I live and work now with the nonprofit that I started almost 10 years ago. Um, but gosh, I think I graduated, I got my PhD in 2015, not 2015. Yeah, gosh, that was a long time ago, wasn't it?
I love that. That's so cool. So my first question for you is tell us a bit about your career path.
Okay. Well, I my interest in agricultural engineering started when I was in high school. And there was a young woman who was a year ahead of me that went into agricultural engineering in college, and she was a friend of mine, and I had never heard of it before. Honestly, from the area that I was in, I never had any engineers in my family. I wasn't familiar with it, and so I learned more. And it was really quite interesting to me because I am interested in the environment and the idea of solving environmental issues that required engineering skills, especially since I enjoyed math. I love physics, and so it was just a natural path. Once I got into the field, though, it was definitely not very diverse. Um, my education, once I started working on my graduate degree, it was definitely a challenge. Just oftentimes being the only woman, being the only person of color in these spaces. And so, when I got into the real world, I suppose, and started working as an engineer for the USDA, I really had a desire to see more people that look like me in engineering, more women in engineering. And I just felt like I had a unique experience um, that I could really lend to crafting and developing programming that could inspire and actually help people of color and women get into these fields. And so that's how STEM Greenhouse was born.
I love that. I think it's really inspiring what you've done. You were working at the USDA and then you saw that, okay, there are not many people who look like you, and you decided to kind of tackle that issue. And so there you go. You kind of just made that your mission, and now you're the founder and CEO of STEM Greenhouse, which I think is really, really awesome. And I think that's pretty cool.
Well, but it wasn't as cool back when I started it. CEO and founder sounds important, but when it was just me by myself, it was pretty scary to kind of give up the security of a job and to follow a passion, and do something that I just felt was right. But it really was the best path for me. But at the same time, I just, I think that's just something that people should be reminded of when they first go into these things. Is quite scary. But here I can sit 10 years later and um, it was worth it. But I didn't always think that. I think I was a little afraid at the beginning.
Absolutely. But here you are today because you took that step to actually, you know, fix that problem that was in your mind, to bring more people just like you in the field. And I think that's really cool because when we all start somewhere, we think, okay, maybe that's not the right path to take. There might be something else I should be doing. Maybe I should give up on this. But you didn't do that. You didn't listen to, the naysayers. You kind of just did it. And I think that's really awesome.
Thank you. Yep, it turned out really well. And I think one of the reasons was because I was going to be satisfied whether or not I received any accolades. I knew that what I was doing was important, back when it was just me and a few little math camps for girls. Now it's much bigger and, we serve hundreds of kids, but it doesn't really matter the scope or the size. I think it's just important for people to do the things that that they love doing and they're passionate about. And whether it grows or not, that's sort of that's just up to God. But I'm just comfortable doing my part.
Absolutely. My question for you, which is a great segue, is what advice would you give someone wanting to pursue a career similar to yours? And do you have any tips to succeed?
Well, one of the things I would say is sometimes when you're getting started on a path like this, it is hard to find role models. And you might be able to find a role model and you might not. I struggle to find role models who were engineers, um, especially ones who were women or people of color. There weren't a lot of people of color and women um, in these spaces. But even when there are no people like exactly like you want in those spaces, there might be some people that you can draw inspiration from. And I think of women that I admire, like an Oprah Winfrey, or there are lots of people who have uh, had similar challenges. Maybe not exactly the challenge that you have, but reading about those people, I've always liked to read books and inspirational writings, devotionals, so that you can inspire yourself, even when you don't see the people around you that look like you. Oftentimes, the spaces that you're in are not necessarily hostile. They're just not super comfortable. So like, let's say I'm in a classroom and I'm the only woman, and I see my friends or my classmates, their friends, they're going out, they're doing things together, and I'm not a part of that. And that's okay. If I don't want to be a part of that, that's okay. There was a time when I thought maybe I should force myself into some of these friend groups, but it just didn't work out because I just didn't have that much in common with them other than what we were working on in class. Um, so I guess my advice would be to be your own person, only do what you really feel comfortable doing, and seek out motivations if you have to outside of, your profession, just to stay motivated and on track with your goals.
Absolutely. And I think something that's really cool is that we can learn from everyone around us. Like there's some experiences that you have that are really cool, and then there's some experiences that my classmates have that I could learn from. So, there's always something that you can learn from another person based on their experiences or values. I think that's pretty cool to take in, but also to just find yourself. Like for me, especially whenever I'm in a new space, I always look up to someone, and inherently I try to mimic what they do, which is kind of bad because but it's like natural
Naturally,
behavior to want to like mimic the person you look up to. Um, but sometimes I just tell myself that, it's okay to be my own person and it's okay to be unique in a room where not anyone looks like me, but Yeah, you just be your own self and definitely learn from people around you, but just remember that you're your own self.
Yeah, that's so true.
Awesome. And my question for you is, what is a common myth about your profession that you want to debunk?
Well, when people hear that I'm an agricultural engineer, they almost always assume that I'm very knowledgeable about plants. And then my nonprofit's name is STEM Greenhouse. So that that I just am not, but I do not have that knowledge. You know, my knowledge is really in soil and more soil physics and the physical properties of soil that allow you to build and stuff. It's just a completely different, it's not plants. And oftentimes it's just like any type of engineering. People don't really know what you do. And so agricultural engineering started out as a division of mechanical engineering. The mechanical engineers that were working on tractors and agricultural equipment. And so really it has a mechanical engineering start, but the work I do is more similar to like a civil engineer. So, generally I would say that people just completely, think I'm working with plants or something. Um, and that's not what I do. But I'm not, but I didn't know what agricultural engineers did either. I mean, there are just so many professions. And I think in going into this STEM space as a STEM educator, one of the things that bothers me the most is that when I tell someone that I'm a STEM educator, they assume that I'm doing robotics or they assume that I'm doing coding. And that's really not the work that we do. We do incorporate those elements, but STEM is not robotics. STEM is not necessarily coding, although I did like all of my graduate work was coding. But people in their minds, they have heard that STEM is a robot so many times that they just assume that that is what STEM is. And it's such a small part of STEM. Like I guess it's also because of what I do. Like I don't really even know any engineers that specialize in robotics. And I know a lot of engineers because of all the time that I've spent in this field. But I was talking to a traffic engineer once. And again, just like people just don't understand how math and engineering and physics, how that can be used in so many aspects of our life. And honestly, it's one of the things that I'm trying to kind of break down as I try to encourage kids to go into STEM is that it's more than robotics. Just because you want to go into STEM doesn't mean that you want to go into robotics as a career, but that's what teachers are often telling them.
Absolutely. And I think that is so important to know because at least in my school, we have a really good robotics team and it's really exciting. But for me, it didn't really click for me. And though I knew that I wanted to go in STEM and probably go, in the more leadership route, there are so many friends just like me who thought that, okay, if I don't like the robotics team, then I guess STEM is not cut out for me. But that is such a myth because robotics is just like a small section. Like, of course, like
Teeny.
absolutely. Like, sure, media portrays it as like the best big thing, but there are so many different places. And, I think it just starts off really young because that's pretty much the only school club that is like about STEM, like engineering at my school.
Mhm.
So, and if people just think that they don't like that one, then STEM is not meant for them. And I think that is such a big myth, and it's
It
something
is
that we
such a,
should
and
demystify.
it's one of the things that keeps a lot of kids from pursuing more math and science. I like one of the things I try to tell people is like, okay, let's assume you want people to get healthier. And you say, well, the only way to get healthier is to join the basketball team. Like only a small portion of our world is going to be a basketball player. But what about everything else you could be to do to be healthy? Physical health, mental health, all the things. But everybody's focused on basketball as the only thing. And that's how it has become in STEM education. But that is because teachers are not STEM professionals. They got a curriculum, they got a catalog. That's all they know. They don't know anything else. And that's why it's so important to have people like me who are engineers speak to this. My daughter is also interested in engineering, but she's more interested in mechanical engineering, I guess, but still not robotics. And she tried it. It just wasn't her thing. And just like you mentioned leadership, I think I read somewhere that um engineering is one of the most common professions among CEOs. Like, having that knowledge and then being able to be a leader is just transformative.
Absolutely. And there's so many kids just like me who prefer humanities. Like I enjoy writing, I enjoy reading, and I don't want to be stuck like fixing a little nut and a bolt the entire like I don't really want to do that. And there's so many different places out there. Like sure there is coding, sure there is artificial intelligence, but there's also, working for the USDA and like working at different places in STEM.
Yes. Yes, exactly. There's a zillion things. So like my daughter, she wants to be an Imagineer and at Disney World, the engineers that work at Disney World. And engineering is just it's not like people think of cars or they imagine certain things, but that's not true. There's just so many any field that you can imagine, just like that traffic engineer. All of the mathematical equations that go into our traffic flow. It's similar to medicine and our blood flow. Like um there's so many things that overlap, and that's why there's engineering is in so many different fields. So that is definitely the misconception that I wish we could abolish. It is going to take some time.
Absolutely. And my question for you is if you could step into my shoes or a younger self, what would you have asked yourself that I didn't?
When I was younger, I thought that to be an engineer, you had to be some sort of, I don't know, a genius or something. I was really surprised when I went into engineering and they were just regular people in doing engineering. I would have told myself that, you don't have to have perfect grades in math. And I mean, I worked very hard to do that, but I was really surprised when I actually got into engineering, how many regular people, who just had a curiosity were in engineering, and we all didn't have to be geniuses or something to become an engineer. Um, Now, don't get me wrong, it was a lot of work and it is a lot of math, and if you don't like it, you're not going to be very happy. But I wish I would have told myself that, like, what I thought, it just wasn't the case when I actually got in it.
Absolutely. And I think that goes to show that media plays a huge role in that. For
Mm-hmm.
me, whenever I used to watch a TV show, there would always be this really nerdy person who's like a super genius, A pluses in everything, robotics team, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And they would just become the engineer and just solve every single problem. And
Yes,
I would like get really discouraged. I would be like, okay, I don't have A pluses and everything. I'm not on the robotics team and I don't enjoy robotics. So I guess,
I
maybe
can't
STEM,
do
yeah, maybe STEM
Not for
isn't for me.
me. Yeah,
Yeah.
I am so that's definitely something that that's why I'm glad that I'm in this work, because like a teacher perhaps can't relay that to a student, but I can. So if someone can see, look, got a doctorate in engineering and she's also sort of a regular person. I thought that, engineers were socially awkward. They were like weirdos or something. You know what I mean? Because like you said, our media portrays them as social outcasts. Nobody knows what they do, nobody cares, you know, but they're just people like me with families and um hobbies, and we're normal folks. But unless you had someone in your life that wasn't a STEM professional, you wouldn't know this. And so I think what you're doing is really great, because it's sort of demystifying STEM and STEM professions for the next generation.
Thank you so much. And it just goes to show that you would think that these so-called geniuses are from a different world than you. Like, okay, like CEOs, startup founders and everything, they're all in a different world than me and I can't get to it. But no, that's like they're all normal people and they've just been in the same places as you, but they decided to shoot their shot.
Exactly. I love the way you put that. And in fact, that's exactly what, when I was a girl, if, you would say, okay, this person has a PhD in engineering, I would think that they were an alien. They would be so foreign to me. But once I actually got into this field, I'm like, wow, these people are really just kind of normal. They listen to music and they don't all talk about engineering all the time, and um, they're just like any other professional. And I think that that's because of the media, especially. That's not the message that young people get.
Definitely. And my question for you is, what are the best resources or books that have helped you find your career?
Mm, okay. Well, I'll be honest, I didn't really use a lot of book type resources to find my career. And even when I was growing up, I know this is hard to imagine, but the internet wasn't even really a thing back then. So, but now there are so many more resources. Um, just if you're, interested in a particular career, maybe you don't even know, but you just want to know what's out there. There are a lot of resources. I do not recall right now some of them, but they're getting better too about having more diverse representation. And, because that's another thing. You would go to this site and they would say, here's the example, and it's a white male. And then another white guy, and eventually you start thinking, well, maybe this isn't for me because I'm not going to grow up to be a white guy. But they are starting to do better about trying to diversify. And that's actually something that even I'm going to try to do is just, when I meet a person of color, make sure I introduce them to my students so that they get, a more well-rounded view or vision of what a person, what someone in STEM looks like.
Absolutely. And I think it just goes back to media. Like, it's always that one nerdy male, typically, and it just kind of ruins it for everybody else. We just have this picture that, okay, maybe science and engineering is only for that subset of people, and everyone else is just like shoved to something else. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
but yeah, we're getting better, but it's taking some time and but I am happy to see things changing a little, but we've got a long way to go.
absolutely. And my question for you is, what do you think is a vital factor that shaped your career? What was your life before learning it, and what was your life after learning it?
Well, now my career is really in a sort of as an educator. I'm in this nonprofit space. And one of the things that really changed my life was um, when I just realized I was happy. And I know this is very strange, but if you can be happy and not have and not necessarily need a certain job title, not need a certain pay level, but just, at some point I just realized, wow, I'm happy doing what I'm doing. And it doesn't matter how much money I get paid. And, it doesn't matter how many people see me or, whatever. That really it almost opened and freed me to advocate for kids the way I wanted to because I was no longer worried about what somebody thought about me or taking away some resource away from me. Um, it seems kind of strange, but I think that that's really the key is to find your happiness. And when you find that, doors just start opening that, that were closed before. All the times when I was just trying so hard to grow this and make it happen, but not really realizing that I was already satisfied. And I think there's something to being satisfied, but at the same time doesn't mean you don't desire to grow and do more, but also just being content with what you have. That is just sort of I don't know, it's the magic to success, I think.
Absolutely. And definitely feel your feelings. But once you become content with where you are at, a lot of people realize that, okay, this person knows what they're doing, and maybe I want them in my group, or, you just,
Mhm,
as you said before, a bunch of doors start opening. So, just realizing that you don't always have to chase after the next shiny object, the next title, but just realize that, maybe a year ago you wanted to be here today. And just remember
mhm.
that, you're in the present moment. Don't really think about the future, the past right now.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the point I'm trying to make. There is just something to being um enjoying the process and not waiting to be happy until you achieve something. But that changes your whole vibe, you know what I mean? And so now when people meet you, you're not asking them for something, you're not begging, you're not trying to get the promotion. You're just your whole self, and people are naturally attracted to that. So yeah, I think
Absolutely.
that sort of happened. Took a
Absolutely.
while for me to get it, but
No worries, no worries. And
mhm,
I think there's a lot of truth in what you just said because people know when you're trying to make a conversation like businesslike and you're trying to get something out of it. But if you're talking to someone with like genuine intent to just talk, then I think that's all the more the merrier.
Yeah, it changes things. It changes things for them and it changes things for you, you know. I tell people now because I'm in this nonprofit space, asking for money is really something I do all the time. Actually, sometimes you could say I'm begging constantly, but I don't see it as begging. I don't have a beggar spirit about it. I'm just presenting what I love to people and it's starting to become attractive. Now, all those
Absolutely.
times when I was begging and I had a spirit of begging, people could tell and it wasn't attractive. So now they love to hear from me because I'm not asking them for anything.
Absolutely. And even if you are asking them for something, then it's really easy to tell if you're like trying to make it really sales like or if you're trying to be
Yes.
like, "Hey, I'm doing this one thing. What are your thoughts on it?" Instead of like asking for some monetary compensation, be like, "How like what
Get
yeah.
advice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just get advice."
Mhm.
Absolutely.
I totally agree. And you will find that not only in, and I'm in the philanthropy in this space, but just in general in life, having conversations with people, having coffee with people, and not necessarily doing it for any other purpose than to just pick their brains. And those conversations are very powerful.
Absolutely. And because we have some additional time, my last question for you is what's one thing you wish you had known when you began your career?
Well, I think when I first started my career, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. Now, this seems very strange, right? I mean, I went all the way through to get a PhD. You would think I knew by then what I wanted, but my PhD experience, I didn't want academia. And that's traditionally what most people who get a PhD go into. And I knew that I didn't want to do that. Well, what do I want to do? I wish back then I knew that it's okay to not have a direct path. Some people do know from the time they're young what they want to be when they, grow up, what their ultimate goal is. And I didn't have that. I really wasn't sure, but I just took the next step and then the next step. And I think that if I would go back and is my advice for other people who might be at the start of their career, or maybe they're even in college and they're thinking, do I really want to do this for the rest of my life? I don't know. Um, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Just keep taking the next step and the everything will just fall in line eventually.
Absolutely. I love what you said there. You kind of just moved on. Even though you were confused, you still did the next step. You
Mhm.
still went to school, even though you didn't know if you actually wanted to go into academia. And you kind of just like explored your options instead of just staying stuck there. And
Yeah.
you just moved on.
Yeah, because if you spend too much time hemming and hawing, like, oh, should I do it? You're wasting some energy that really you could be using to finish whatever you're doing right now. And it was just, I needed to get that over with. It was a major accomplishment, and I'm glad I did it. But at the same, but also like I like school, so staying in school was not a problem for me because I just tend to like school. And who knew? Now I'm back in education. You know what I'm saying? So obviously education is my thing. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I just naturally fell back into education in school because that's just what I love.
And you never know how things will turn out.
You know.
Um, yeah, like with Steve Jobs, before he was gonna create Apple, he took this calligraphy class for fun, and he probably thought he wouldn't need to use it, but he just took it for fun, and then lo and behold, he started making different fonts, and
Mm,
that kind of just came from his calligraphy classes. So you never know when something is
you
gonna
never, that's so
like, yeah,
true.
you never know.
Yeah, I will also say that when I getting my PhD in like now I have a programming that is really around agriculture and in agricultural science. So even though I didn't know when I started STEM Greenhouse that one day I would have a program that reached, hundreds of kids where they would be learning agricultural science and my background would be beneficial. All those things, play a part in it. All of those programs, like you might be in a summer program or something, all of those kind of shape the programming that I'm creating now. I'm taking the best of everything I've experienced and trying to curate special opportunities for kids. And so, yeah,
Absolutely.
you never you never lose or you never waste experiences. They're never wasted. You never know when you're going to need them, but it's never a waste.
100% agreed. All right. Well, because we're almost done, my last question for you before we end off is, do you have any last words to the audience?
Well, I think, again, I go back to myself when I was young. Now, when I first started talking to you, I was telling you about all the time when I was already good at math, I was getting A's and all of that. Well, there was a time before that when I was really quite self-conscious when it comes to my math ability. And I really have a testimony to anybody who isn't, just doesn't think that they can cut it, perhaps. I was really scared. And that's also something that I bring to my programming because I did not think I was as good as the other people or whatever. What ended up happening was I kind of started to learn how my best learning type, I like to learn through writing. I'm a writer. And that's why I was kind of surprised that I ended up going into STEM. And I was taking a challenging algebra class. And I decided that I would just basically write my own algebra book. In the process of writing it, it just made it just that much clearer to me. You know what I mean? And so I've always been the type of person who takes way more notes than anybody else. I'll be in class and I'm just writing, and that's not because it's just because that's how I learn. But I didn't know that when I was growing up. And so I just thought I wasn't good at it. Um, but I would just encourage, the audience to also think about how they learn. Maybe it's not the same as everybody else, and maybe they have to do something differently. Maybe they're more of an auditory learner, whatever the case might be. Um, but it doesn't mean that you can't achieve your goals. If this career seems interesting to you, do not let one class in college or high school prevent you from your goal. I mean, that's just one class. Believe me, that one class is not going to prevent you from achieving your dreams. So go after all those things that you want to go after in life. Also, be sure to understand the difference between the class that kind of gets you to that career and the career. Try to learn more about the career and be less concerned about the individual class that will get you there because some of those individual classes are scary. But the good thing is that there will be some people were good in this and some people were good in that. And when engineers work as teams, and so the person who was good in the thing that you were weak in, you use them, and then you're strong in something that they're weak. And then you just, like I said, it's a wonderful collaborative effort, I would say, when you start going into STEM. And that's the design of, engineering. They always talk about teams because like I said, where one person is weak, another is strong. So don't get caught up on your weakness. Um, be more emphasize your strengths.
Absolutely. I love what you said there. Well, thank you so much, Kelly, for being on this interview with me. I absolutely love talking to you.
Thank you for having me.
And here are my 3 cents on this episode with Dr. Kelly. 1. Personal fulfillment versus stability. The decision to leave a secure job for passion highlights the conflict between the safety of financial stability and the desire for personal fulfillment. And this underscores the importance of risk-taking when pursuing a career aligned with personal passions, often requiring a leap of faith. 2. True happiness often comes from within and doesn't necessarily rely on external validation or material success. The focus on personal happiness suggests the importance of living authentically, aligning one's actions and choices with personal values and desires. And 3. Role models provide guidance and inspiration, serving as examples of success and pathways to achieve similar goals. Observing role models allows individuals to learn from their experiences, both successes and failures, offering valuable lessons. Thus, that concludes today's episode. If you want to know more about how I relate to these amazing topics, then stay tuned for upcoming episodes. A free way to support this show is by leaving it a 5-star rating and a review on the player you are listening to. Let me know what you enjoy about this podcast, as it's a chance to tell me what you love about the show, and it helps others discover it too. Once again, thank you for finding me, and I hope we stay in touch with each other. Dito, you're listening to Aarna Sahu, the host of Aarna's News. Toodles!